There are a lot of takers today. They want to get into policy and what it actually takes for them to get into policies.
The first step to understand policy is less about knowledge and more about, how you think and behave. You need analytical clarity, basically an ability to sort of break down complex issues, but equally, you need institutional awareness.
At this stage of your career, what made you write this book, The Policy Self?
I realized that policy is being taught in theory, but practiced very differently. But in reality, policy work, it's about how you show up, how you communicate, how you build trust.
What makes a strong candidate when it comes to policies who has to be hired?
Clarity of thought, evidence of real engagement. In policy, your writing is often your thinking. So top candidates also show sort of structured thinking. They can break down sort of problems, prioritize, and sort of make trade-offs.
In this world of corporate, wherein there are thousands of careers, some well known, like doctors, engineers, IT professional, human resources, but some not so. One such career is a policy professional person. We have our guest today with us, Nitin Saluja, who's going to tell us exactly how this career is shaping up, what's in it for you, and who should opt for it. The best is to learning for the person who's doing it. So, Nitin, welcome to you on this podcast, which is People Engine Podcast.
Thanks, Rajan, for having me here.
So, Nitin, you have loads of experience when it comes to government, when it comes to corporates, when it comes to think tanks, civil society. When it comes to profession, where is public policy and policy professionalism, what are those constants across these roles and what really changes?
Well, that's a great place to start because on the surface, these worlds look very different, but at their core, they are actually connected by a few common traits. Across all policy roles, what really matters is your ability to read institutions, not just, issues that we hear from day to day, right?
Mm.
Policy is never just about, the idea. It's about, understanding how decisions move, who influences them, and, when to engage. The second constant, is comfort with ambiguity. You are almost never working with complete information when it comes to public policy. You're constantly sort of making judgment calls. And third is communication. The ability to simplify, complexity is probably the most underrated skill in policy. Now, where things differ is in how these skills actually get applied in real life, right? When it comes to working with the government, you're working within processes and hierarchy, right? Decisions move through systems and not just individuals, right? So alignment matters more than persuasion.
Okay.
In corporate roles, the focus shifts because you're talking about outcomes and speed, and you're translating business priorities, into policy language and managing risk. Think tanks are more about intellectual credibility. Influence is slower, more indirect, but often deeper. And civil society, I feel, is the closest on the ground. It is driven by impact and often sort of requires persistence over long sort of periods. So the craft actually remains the same, but the context sort of changes as you practice it.
Okay. So, Nitin, it's a wonderful read that I have when it comes to your book. In your chapter, in your book, you mentioned that this policy as a whole is no longer an accidental career. It has become a strategic decision making for a person to be a part of this group.
It's a strategic function.
It's a
That's what I
strategic
said.
function today.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So for a very long time, people didn't plan to enter policy. They sort of landed into it. There were no clear pathways, no defined roles, and that's now changing. We are seeing structured policy teams within companies, clearer roles in the government, and growing ecosystem of academic programs and fellowships across the country. There's also sort of increasing specialization. You now have people focused purely on, say, tech policy or trade policy, ESG, digital regulation, and tons of other domains, within the larger public policy ecosystem. Even recruiters today, understand that policy is a distinct function, which wasn't the case earlier.
Right.
But I would say that we are still in transition, like you mentioned. We don't yet have sort of fully standardized skill frameworks, and there's still some over reliance on, say, degrees instead of demonstrated ability.
Hmm.
So yes, the profession is becoming more structured, but it's still evolving, which actually makes it an exciting time to be in policy.
If you talk about people who want to get into it, there are a lot of takers today. They want to get into policy, but they don't know where it actually start from and where does it take them in terms of their career and what it actually takes for them to get into policies.
So I think, the first step to understand policy is less about knowledge and more about, how you think and behave. You need analytical clarity, basically an ability to sort of break down complex issues, but equally you need institutional awareness.
Hmm.
You need knowing, how decisions actually move is extremely critical. And then, of course, there's communication, not just speaking well, but thinking enough to express ideas simply.
Hmm.
But beyond skills, I think it's also really about the mindset. You need patience. Systems don't move fast. You need not everything requires your opinion. At times silence is the best strategy, and you need the ability to sort of listen, especially earlier in your career. And this is where, the idea of the policy self comes in. It's about developing your own way of thinking, learning how to sort of filter noise, how to build judgment, how to operate with credibility. And I know that this doesn't happen sort of overnight. It takes time.
Hmm.
It builds over time through sort of experience and reflection. So these are the, some of the things that the policy professionals who are planning to get into this career
Hmm.
need to be mindful of.
How much is about a degree, education, those kind of things when it comes to policy professional careers?
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, I think it's coming out more towards a personality suiting kind of a role
Yeah.
rather than the education side of things.
Yeah.
What's your take on education for this kind of a career?
There is the ecosystem is evolving. It is getting far more structured than what it was before. Initially, like, back in 2011, 12, when I was planning to pursue my masters in public policy, we did not have any structured courses, at least in India,
Hmm.
if I can go back and remember. And hence I was looking for seeking such an opportunity to study abroad in,
Hmm.
in the domain of public policy. So I think we've come a long way.
Hmm.
Today we have institutions or organizations, or we have colleges and universities that are actually they have a structured public policy curriculum. Someone is teaching masters in public policy or undergrad programs in public policy as a 3-year or a 4-year program. We have sort of evolved, as a market, especially in the education space.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So, Nitin, at this stage of your career, what made you write this book, the policy self? So, what was the thought process behind it?
At some point,
Hmm.
I realized that policy is being taught in theory,
Hmm.
but practiced very differently. Right, in classrooms, we talk about sort of frameworks
Hmm.
and models, but in reality, policy work is deeply behavioral. It is about how you show up, how you communicate, how you sort of build trust, and there's a whole layer of this profession that is actually invisible. And I felt that this wasn't being captured anywhere.
Hmm.
Also, more people are now entering this profession than before, right? But they often are entering without any guidance on how to navigate the system.
Hmm.
So this book actually is an attempt
Hmm.
to bridge that gap,
Hmm.
to say that policy is not just about what you know, but how you think, how you act, how you remain sort of grounded in complex systems. And that's what I call the policy self.
No, I think it's a wonderful initiative, Nitin, because there's so much information which I'm sure is going to be in your book, which is going to be so helpful, not only for the policy professional people,
Yeah.
but even for the general public who's
Yeah.
going to read this book.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. It was a good attempt for this book. When it comes to any profession, there's also a misconception which rides with it, right?
Yeah, right.
So, what are the misconceptions that you see which is going to be a part of policy professionals' thought process, which has to be cleared?
So, one common misconception is that policy is about sort of big ideas and influence. In reality, it's about process,
Hmm.
patience,
Hmm.
and persistence.
Hmm.
Another is that you need not to know everything, right? You don't, right? You need to know how to learn, and more importantly, how to ask the right questions.
Hmm.
People also think policy roles are glamorous. The truth is that most of the work is quiet. behind the scenes and incremental.
Mm.
And perhaps the biggest one is that good arguments win. People think that, but they don't always,
Mm.
right? It is about timing. It is about relationships. It is about feasibility. That matters. What surprises most people is how much policy work is actually coordination and not creation.
I would like to flip a question and flip a role. Being a recruiter, I understand things from that lenses also. So if I put those lenses and understand what makes a strong candidate when it comes to policies who has to be hired by any organization,
I
what are
think
those traits?
I think, recruiters today are looking beyond sort of degrees.
Mm.
What really stands out is, clarity of thought. Can you sort of take a complex issue and explain it simply?
Mm.
Second, I think is evidence of real engagement.
Mm.
Have you interacted with institutions,
Mm.
or is it purely an understanding which is theoretical? Third, I think writing in policy, your writing is often your thinking. So top candidates also show sort of structured thinking. They can break down sort of problems, prioritize, and sort of make trade-offs. And importantly, they connect policy to real world outcomes. So what differentiates people is not just what they know, but how mature their thinking is, even early in their careers.
Okay. Nitin, I would like to end this conversation with the last question. And that is, in your expert view,
Yeah.
where do you see the policy professionalism as a career is heading in the next 10 years?
See, I think that policy roles will become far more central to how organizations operate. We are already sort of seeing the overlap with technology, data, and sort of global regulation. The future policy professional, will need to be multi disciplinary. My advice would be simple. Build depth in one area, but stay sort of exposed to multiple sectors
Mm.
and focus on becoming reliable, credible, because in policy, trust actually compounds over time.
Mm.
So, yeah. So, in my closing sort of remarks would be that policy is ultimately a human profession. Systems matter, but the person navigating them, matters more. And that's really the core idea behind the policy self.
Mm. Thank you so much, Nitin. It's a
Thank you.
wonderful conversation. There's so much to learn from the conversation today, and all the best for your book. I really hope that it does well, and it's a wonderful read. I've read it. It's a wonderful read. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Rajan.
you.